Most people believe wealth begins with money. But the truth is, wealth usually begins with a mindset shift. Because long before someone becomes financially free, they first stop thinking like everyone else. And that shift changes everything. Not immediately, not overnight, but slowly, over years of decisions, habits, and ways of seeing the world. The dangerous part is this. Most people never realize they are trapped inside a mindset that quietly keeps them financially dependent for life. Not because they are lazy, not because they are unintelligent, but because they inherited ways of thinking that were designed for survival, not freedom. And once you understand this, you start noticing it everywhere. Most people are taught to think about money the same way. Go to school, get a stable job, work hard, earn more, spend carefully, repeat for 40 years. And on the surface, that sounds responsible. But hidden inside that system is a dangerous assumption. The belief that income alone creates security. So people spend most of their lives trying to increase earnings without ever changing the structure of their financial life. And because of that, many people become trapped inside a cycle where higher income only creates higher expenses, a better apartment, a more expensive car, a larger mortgage, more subscriptions, more obligations, more financial pressure disguised as success. And eventually, people become dependent on maintaining income just to protect the lifestyle they built, which means freedom never truly arrives. Only temporary relief does. And for many people, that cycle quietly continues for decades. One of the biggest differences between wealthy thinking and survival thinking is time. People trapped in survival mode focus almost entirely on immediate problems. This month's bills, next week's paycheck, today's stress. And when financial pressure becomes constant, long-term thinking slowly disappears. Because the brain becomes trained to prioritize short-term relief, not long-term ownership, not long-term freedom, just survival. And this affects more than money. It affects decisions, behavior, emotions, even identity. People begin making financial choices based on temporary emotional comfort, buying things to feel successful, spending to reduce stress, upgrading lifestyles to avoid feeling behind. And modern culture intensifies this constantly. Every day, people are exposed to carefully edited lifestyles online that quietly redefine what normal is supposed to look like. So instead of building freedom, many people unknowingly build financial dependency. And the most dangerous part is, it often looks successful from the outside. The wealthy often think differently about time itself. Most people ask, how much can I earn this month? But financially intelligent people often ask, how do I build something that continues working without my constant presence? That single shift changes everything. Because income requires effort, but ownership creates leverage. And over time, leverage changes lives. This is why wealthy people often prioritize assets, equity, ownership, systems, and long-term compounding. Not because they avoid work, but because they understand something many people discover very late in life. Active income has limits. Time has limits. Energy has limits. But ownership scales differently. And eventually, small decisions repeated consistently over many years begin separating people financially in massive ways. Not overnight, but gradually, quietly, almost invisibly, until one day, the gap becomes impossible to ignore. The real mindset shift is not becoming obsessed with money. It is becoming less emotionally controlled by money. Because financially free people often think differently about consumption. They stop asking, "What can I afford?" and start asking, "What will this cost me long term?" Not only financially, but emotionally, psychologically, energetically. They begin understanding that every financial decision creates future consequences. Some create freedom, others create dependence, and eventually, they stop chasing appearances because they realize something powerful. Looking wealthy and becoming financially free are often completely different paths. This is why many financially intelligent people delay visible luxury. Not because they cannot afford it, but because they value future freedom more than temporary status. And that level of thinking changes behavior completely for many people. This realization arrives late in life, after decades of stress, decades of pressure, decades of chasing a version of success that never created peace. And eventually, many people begin asking a painful question. If I worked this hard for this long, why do I still feel financially trapped? Because freedom was never only about income. It was about structure, behavior, psychology, and long-term thinking. But modern life rarely teaches people this early. Instead, people are rewarded for consumption, for appearance, for visible success, not for patience, not for restraint, not for long-term ownership. And because of that, many people spend years climbing financially without ever escaping financially. The truth is, the 1% mindset is not really about money, and that is the part most people misunderstand. Because financially intelligent people eventually realize money is only a tool. The real goal was never numbers. The real goal was freedom. Freedom from constant stress, freedom from dependence, freedom from needing every decision to be controlled by financial pressure. And once people understand that, their entire relationship with money begins changing because they stop seeing wealth as a way to impress others and start seeing it as a way to reclaim control over their time, their energy, their peace, and ultimately, their life. That is the real shift. The wealthy are not always happier because they own more. Many are calmer because they are less financially trapped, less controlled by survival, less controlled by urgency, less controlled by fear. And that changes the way they think, the way they behave, the way they make decisions. Because eventually, when someone is no longer emotionally desperate, they begin thinking long-term, more clearly, more patiently, more intentionally. And that is where real transformation quietly begins. Not in a motivational moment, not in sudden success, but in the gradual realization that freedom is built through repeated decisions, made consistently over many years. Small choices, repeated quietly, repeated patiently, repeated when nobody notices. And over time, those decisions begin changing a person's entire future. Because eventually, your mindset shapes your habits shape your decisions, and your decisions shape your life. Which means the future people experience years from now is often being quietly created by the way they think today. And once that realization truly sinks in, money stops becoming only something you earn. It becomes something you manage with intention, something you use to create stability, space, time, peace. And maybe the biggest realization of all is this. The 1% do not simply think differently about wealth. They think differently about life itself. And that shift changes everything. If this changed the way you think about money, Subscribe to Echelon Capital for more videos on wealth psychology, financial systems, and long-term financial freedom.